What's up everyone, Sean Astrom here. In today's little video I wanted to show some preferences that I've found in Unreal Engine to make things a lot easier to use. But one thing I found kind of interesting is when getting into the editor preferences, there's really no place to change the user interface font scale and just the UX, UI size altogether. But what I did find is if you type in this wonderful shortcut Control-Shift-W, that will bring up this window here, and this is called the Widget Reflector. I think this is more of an advanced part of the editor, but if you notice here, there's this slider right here, this application scale. And if I type in a value like 1.2, you can see how our entire user interface scales up, which is super handy if you are on a higher resolution monitor or you're kind of in between resolutions. That's kind of my setup. I'm at 2.5K on my current display. And so what I've found for me that works really well is a setting of 1.1 as opposed to the default, which is 1 obviously. And you can just see how small some of the fonts are. And again, this is really more helpful if you're on like kind of an in-between resolution. If you have a 4K monitor, I believe there is a mode for that. But yeah, anyway, so that is the first and foremost thing I wanted to share. And then the other items I wanted to go through quickly here is if you type in invert here in the search filter under general keyboard shortcuts, there's this controls option down here, and there's invert middle mouse pan and then invert right mouse dolly. And if we enable both of those, that's going to allow the control to be a lot more similar to what we find in a normal, well, kind of more standard 3D program. So that is super helpful, and I find that by enabling those, that gets me into a much more familiar situation. And then the other one is if we type in panning, you'll see under content editors, graph editors, the panning mouse button, I like to set this to middle. And what that does is if we open up a material here in our editor here, now I can middle click and pan around, which again is much more familiar to me. I use Substance Designer an awful lot, and that is how you pan around in a program like Substance Designer or Cinema 4D. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. The other option that might be interesting to point out is if we also type in orbit. There's one other setting here. Under level editor viewports, there's this orbit camera around selection, and if we enable that, that just allows us to kind of automatically orbit around whatever objects we have selected, and that's super handy. And again, and I'm hitting the F key for those who might not know how to focus in on an object. But yeah, so the orbit around an object is super handy. And again, you can just type in orbit here and orbit camera around selection. Super, super handy preference to enable. And that's about it for this video. Just wanted to go over some of those preferences that I have had to kind of dig around for a little bit to get Unreal Engine to behave a little more familiar. Thanks so much for checking this out.